Hello, friends, and welcome to the July 15th edition of Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly opportunity for mainstream Texans of faith to learn about public policy issues and how they can engage in the process here in the great state of Texas. My name is Scott Adnip, Texas Impact's Outreach Director and your host. I have to say I've missed you the last few weeks as I've been on vacation and we had holidays and lots of other things. So glad to be back and grateful for being Josh, both filling in while I was away and being here today. So thank y'all for being here. So today's episode is brought to you by Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas. And in today's episode, we will continue wrapping up the 86th Texas legislature and provide some updates on immigration-related issues. It was a big week on that front last week. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll continue with the legislative updates. But after that, we are really looking for your feedback on what you would like content-wise out of Weekly Witness. What you and your congregation would like to hear. So please feel free to reach out to me at scott@texasimpact.org to share your ideas. In terms of what we're working on right now, Texas Impact is going to be hosting a series of advocacy trainings across the state. The first one of those is scheduled for next Sunday, July 21st at Bering Memorial United Methodist Church in Houston. You can register for that online at texasimpact.org and find more information via our social media. Please make sure to invite your friends in the Houston area. We're also continuing Courts and Ports. We'll talk more about that during this episode, but have continued to have groups go down every week, helping congregations to understand and see firsthand what's happening at the border. There's currently a group down there from Dallas. I saw that on social media this morning. So for those listening live, please feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat section and make sure that you and your friends are subscribed to our YouTube channel, Texas Impact's YouTube, as well as the podcast via iTunes and every other podcast app. So jumping right in, I missed y'all the last couple of weeks. How are you doing?
We're okay. We left quietly while you were gone.
I don't believe that's real, but y'all did do well. I listened to the episode in the car with some college students, and they promised me they were going to go subscribe and download every episode.
Fantastic.
We'll see if that actually happened or not. So, Josh, we've been doing legislative updates for the last couple of weeks. In terms of immigration, I know there wasn't a lot that went on, and we're going to be talking about what's happened since the session, but want to give us kind of a quick recap of what happened during the actual legislative session?
Yeah, I mean, during the actual session, the 140 days that are wrapped up around Memorial Day, not much. If you had said, let's do a legislative recap on immigration, I would have said, okay, that'll be it. No.
It would have been a very quick episode.
It would have been very quick.
Yeah.
I mean, there were very few bills. There was not a lot of an appetite. A lot of that's because in the 85th session in 2017, the session ended in a fistfight over immigration issues. So with the 2018 election and the bad taste in their mouths from 2017, there just really wasn't an appetite to take on those issues. I mean, I think there was one hearing that was simply that. It was a hearing mixed in with a bunch of other non-related to immigration issues, just to hear some of the SB4 bills, because there were still Democrats who wanted to try to tweak and repeal and or tweak that. And so it was more of a courtesy hearing on those lines. But they just did not want to tackle it. And then that was how the session wrapped up.
All right. So from a Texas Impact perspective, a lot of our folks are really interested in this issue. We have more demand almost than we have spots for Courts and Ports. And I think Erica said we've had over 200 people, Texans faith, who've attended Courts and Ports trip. And a lot of them are asking, what's next? What can we do next? And so, B, do you want to talk some about how we're responding to those questions?
Yeah, actually, so that's right. We've had more than 200 people so far, and I think we're booking into November and December at this point. So people are really excited to go and see what's going on. And when they go, they come back and they say, gosh, that really was upsetting, and I want to do something about it. And so the question is, what can people do? Well, so a couple of months ago, national partners, and for people who aren't aware, most of the national denominations that Texas Impact partners with participate in something called the Interfaith Immigration Coalition in DC. This is 52-ish national organizations, a lot of them denominational bodies, and they put out some talking points that we thought were really interesting about Congress is going to begin thinking about its new budget and what could the federal budget, what moves are there within the federal budget that could help alleviate some of the crisis, humanitarian and law enforcement and, all of it that's going on at the border. And so we started to have the idea that what we should do is focus on members of Congress who are going to be home in the district in August. And, like Josh said, there wasn't much, the legislature didn't have much of an appetite and also didn't perceive that they had much latitude to do much of anything about it. So it does seem like aiming at Congress is the right approach. So we've been working diligently. I say we, I mean, our interns and our staff members have been working for the past several weeks, setting in motion congressional district visits for every member of the Texas congressional delegation. And a lot of times, when we meet with national colleagues, they talk about seeing their whole congressional delegation, all 6 of them. In Texas, we have 36 members of the U.S. House of Representatives plus 2 senators. So it's quite a party if everybody gets a visit.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been in contact with all those offices. They are eager to hear what Texans have to say. And they're especially eager to hear what people have to say who have been to courts and ports. We were with one congressional office last week. We had a meeting, and then I know that's the second one where we've done kind of a pre-meeting with that office to help them get a handle on who our constituency is. And first of all, they are very appreciative of the idea that people are coming because they want to talk about policy and they don't just want to, yell or feel their feelings, that they actually want to engage with Congress to talk about policy solutions. And what we've been asking them is, what are the mechanics that you prefer when you're going to have a real substantive constituent meeting? Some of them say, I want to have only so many people. Some of them say, I don't want to do it unless I have at least so many people. Some of them say, I'd rather the constituent make the visit. Some of them say, I'd rather you guys make the appointment and just tell people when to show up. So offices are varied in their approaches, but they all, the commonality would be, they are all eager to hear from constituents while they are in the district in August. So if people are interested in attending those visits, we're actively in the process of finding people to populate them. And I'm sure that if a member of Congress knew that they had enough people attending, wanting to attend a visit with them, that they could schedule 2, I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. But it really is something where they're looking for constituent feedback.
And so if people are interested in signing up for one of those visits, where do they go? Who do they contact?
So I am so happy to report that we have on our website a new improved interface for courts and ports and some of our other projects. So if people go to our homepage, they'll find a thing that says sign up here to participate in congressional visits. Click on that and it'll take you to a sign up sheet. The sign up sheet doesn't commit the person to a particular visit on a particular day. It puts them on the list so that we can call them and figure out what, we're not going to schedule times for when people can't go.
And so the webpage is texasimpact.org. So go check that out. So we've talked about the fact that not much happened during the legislature. We've talked about the fact that people are interested and engaged, and we were already planning this series of congressional visits in August. Kind of on top of that, there was a legislative hearing last week out here, and I was on the road, but my social media was blowing up. So walk us through what happened. I guess maybe why was that called and what happened at that meeting?
Yeah, I think the thing, so based on the testimony, it really seemed that things kind of changed at the local level for local governments around March or April. And this was based on testimony from county judges and some mayors, especially around the border region, and especially in the more remote areas of the border region. So a lot of it's kind of it's not, you can blame it on NPP or the Remain in Mexico policy.
Right.
That's a little too simplistic. There's a bunch of different things happening at a regulatory level that our government's doing. According to the local people, what they testified to was a real lack of judges causing a backlog. So what happens is somebody arrives, they're then processed by Customs and Border Patrol. There are not enough agents because there are not enough Border Patrol agents because they're having to do humanitarian work and not doing the part of screenings.
Right.
They're being rerouted to places like California, which leaves a deficit of people in other areas. So that's a hiring issue. And then every step in the process is just basically broken in some way. Then you get to the point where CPB processes somebody, which they're supposed to do in 72 hours, but it takes a lot longer, sometimes weeks, as the reporting has confirmed as well in the media. So they're supposed to go to the detention center after that, but the detention centers are all full, and that's because the detention centers aren't allowing bond, or if they do bond, it's not like it was. Also, they're awaiting trial, and they're busy awaiting trial because there's a lack of judges on the tail end to process all those cases. I mean, I think I looked at the numbers, and I remember in the Obama administration, they were pretty abysmal too. There were around 700,000 people awaiting their immigration trial. Now it's up to 900,000. So all along the way, there's just a kind of death by a thousand cuts being the metaphor. There's no one thing. There's just a bunch of little things causing this big, massive backlog in the system that's having ripple effects all the way down to the local level. And so what we heard some of the local people say is that that's causing a reroute. So a lot of people are now coming through Del Rio, through Eagle Pass, really remote areas instead of El Paso and Brownsville, which is where a lot of the activities have been taking place. Still, there's a lot of activity taking place there as well. So like in areas, think about Del Rio, it's a very small town, and they testified that it was costing about $2,500 a day just to, and if you want to do the math on that, just shy of $1 million a year. And they're having to treat it very much like a natural disaster.
Right.
And because the issues are so similar, the issues of human need are so similar, where you got some just basic necessities, food, shelter, sleep, clothes, shower, hygiene. I mean, these are all some really basic things that they're having to do, because what happens is Del Rio, when you are processed through Customs and Border Patrol or CPB, and then you're released, a bus drops off, and they were testifying to roughly on average around 80 people on a bus. They get dropped off at the Greyhound station. And when I say Greyhound station, I think those of us from urban areas have an idea of what that means. In Del Rio, the Greyhound station is the Stripes gas station.
Oh.
So you have a gas station at which about 80 people are getting dropped off trying to process their bus fare, and a gas station is not equipped at all to handle some of those basic human needs. So Del Rio responded by kind of creating a coalition, and this is true for most locales, where local government and the nonprofit sector are
Primarily
having
the
to,
faith community.
I think overwhelmingly the faith community, being on the very front lines of this, they're always one of the leaders whenever you kind of look at different news stories on this. All these collaborations being cobbled together to try to deal with basic human needs. And so there's a cost to the taxpayer, and then there's a cost to those who tithe or donate, if you will, in a more secular way. But I mean, again, overwhelming number of people of faith, and so it's tithers and taxpayers are getting really doubly hammered because of the real downstream effects that are happening there at the local level.
Well, and also, I'm sorry not to jump on you, but one of the things I found personally most shocking in that hearing was the county judge who testified that the county judges in, I guess it's in Valverde County that Del Rio is in, were spending money out of pocket, tens of thousands of their own dollars to take care of the humanitarian need. Well, on the one hand, you'd say, well, that's laudable of those county officials, and that is some public service. But on the other hand, that is not a way to run a state, because if we're dependent on the kindness or the compassion of a local elected official, even the best local elected official is eventually going to say, I'm sorry, I'm tapped out.
Yeah, it reminded me of that story of teachers.
It's not any different from
finance
teachers
issue
buying the paper for their classroom.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So now, so what it comes down to a lot is money.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But money is not the only issue that we heard brought up at that hearing.
No, and I think the other one, so the first panel was largely due to the concerns of local government and their financial needs. The second half of it, second panel, not half, I should say, a third of it, I should say, was really kind of health and human services related agencies. So HHSC, the Health and Human Service Commission, DFPS, that's the Department of Family Protective Services, Child Protection, and then DSHS, which is the State Health Services, all had a panel where they were really talking about the other areas of the state where we do have some oversight role, where we
Right.
license the child care centers that both families and children go to federally. So the federal level, it's called the Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR. Those facilities that are contracted have a state license, so the state has a role in I think it was 2,400-ish. The minimum standards,
Yeah.
which is a very boring way to say a whole lot of really important
Yes, exactly.
technical things that a facility has to
I thought
comply
you were
with
saying
to
how many
ensure health and
facilities.
safety.
And they.
Oh, 41?
41.
41
It's not
licensed
just a
facilities.
couple.
Yeah, and some of them, some of them were state and federal, if I recall.
Right.
They had licenses to do state children and
And federal. That's
federal
right.
children
That's
as
right.
well. So 41 licenses, 41 different facilities. They get maybe one visit a year unannounced, and then
You mean a licensing, so their
When
regulation,
the inspectors come in once a year unannounced and once a year kind of routinely.
Yep.
That's state statute that requires that.
right,
Of those facilities, and then any follow-up visits to bring the facility up to the licensing standards if they are found deficient in a list of violations. So there's a very important licensing component.
that's right.
Then there's a very important child protection component, which is not at HHSC. So licensing is slightly different
Right.
than abuse and, well, not slightly, it's very different than abuse and neglect.
Yeah.
But in the
No, right,
enforcement
that's
of
right,
it,
that's right.
it is two different agencies is what I mean. So over at the Department of Family Protective Services, they do abuse and neglect investigations, of which they said they had done, I'm trying to remember the numbers, it was in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say 80 something,
But yeah,
But
I think
of
that was
which-
81 actually. I just
of
found it.
which, how many were actually pursued?
So actually it was 120 in the last 2 years.
Okay,
39 in 2018, and then
and then
81 now,
this year.
this year now.
So
those
we're
numbers,
halfway through the year, we're
have doubled.
already,
double the
getting
number.
close to 3.
Yeah, 13 are still pending. They and it found reason to believe that there was abuse and neglect in 2, and they were ongoing. So the legislative committee, so the legislature has a privilege that the public does not, where they can hear it. Essentially, it's like executive committee,
Right,
where they can take a thing, where they can bring in the agency to tell them information they wouldn't otherwise tell the public to. You don't jeopardize an ongoing investigation.
right.
So they want
So they asked them to come to that.
follow up.
Yeah.
And I suspect, actually I don't know for sure, but it's interesting to me, I'll just leave it at that there are 2 instances where they found reason to believe abuse and neglect, and there were 2 instances of death. I don't know if those are the 2 same cases
Well, if
or
they're
not.
not, then there's at least 4, right?
Exactly.
I mean-
and does a child have to die before the agency finds abuse and
Constitutes-
neglect? That's an interesting question that lawmakers, the executive,
but let's-
legislative should ask.
But let's walk back a little bit because it is the most extreme. But one of the things the public has been hearing about a lot in the past couple of weeks is just the pervasive lack of sanitation.
Mhm.
And so one of the things the agency can do, I'm sure you're about to get to this, they can grant exemptions
Oh, yeah.
to licensing standards. And not every facility has an exemption right now, but they specifically said, these are the ones that have them right now. Well, of course, that's, on any given day, it might be different ones, but the exemptions that they have are a lot for health and safety sort of things. They're hand washing, going to the bathroom, showers,
Yeah.
counting,
and-
beds.
And based on the report that I saw, it looks like most, and they call them this wonderful bureaucratic term, variances.
Variances, right?
Yeah, we
Like
don't-
how far you set back your garage. from
Yeah, I
the-
know, yeah. I mean, what we're talking about is important standards for how we treat children with this
Right.
bureaucratic term variances. Nevertheless, the ones that it looks like what they largely give these variances for have to do with square footage and bed space and crowding. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
again, it sounds like, oh, how many square feet? Well, we can waive the square feet. Wait a minute. Let's think about
That's-
human beings
right,
that
there's
are
not a room to lie
occupying.
down, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's in the CPD facilities, not the
Well, but I'm
hotel,
just
so
saying,
it's
that's the
possible.
kind of thing that you would get into with square feet.
Yeah.
So the upshot is, there's a lot of licensing and investigative authority
Mhm.
that it seems like the state agencies should have, which at a minimum would mean that the legislature could be keeping very close tabs on these facilities. And so what did they say about that?
Yeah, so when it comes to those 41 facilities, they acknowledge that they have a jurisdiction and a role to play there. But when it comes to kind of anything over and above the things that are just explicit in the statute, the kind of mantra that we kept hearing from whenever questions arose from the legislators was, we don't have jurisdiction. We don't have jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Heard that over and over again. We don't have jurisdiction over that. We don't have jurisdiction over that. And the question that brings to my mind, at least, is why not?
Right. Where does it say you don't?
Yeah, I know. I mean, you see, and I don't want to. I mean, I'm an attorney, so you see the cop shows all the time, where it's like the turf wars between the locals and the feds, when the feds step in. I mean, wait a minute. I mean, why is it we're a sovereign? The state is a sovereign. Police powers, and this is where I'm going to put my attorney hat back on. I mean, police powers are presumed to be a state function. Is there something in federal law that says we don't have jurisdiction? If so, I would like somebody to cite that.
Right.
Because otherwise, I think
And
there's
I'm-
concurrent jurisdiction. That would be the assumption.
Well, and I mean, Texas has never shied away from trying to assert its own jurisdiction over activities that go on in the boundaries of our state.
Yeah, I think
So-
there was about 40 some odd lawsuits that got filed, and it was about healthcare or environment.
Sure,
Mhm.
but it seems to me that the least they could be doing at this point is really pushing the bounds of what jurisdiction they do have. That would probably include talking to Congress, talking to members of the Texas congressional delegation about we need help understanding from our federal partners what the right responsibilities are here. But one
In
way,
the worst case scenario, it gets challenged in court, and then we have
Exactly.
Then we have clear law.
then we have clear law.
Yeah.
But so it ended up at the end of that hearing that we had initially thought, well, the primary ask for elected officials over the summer is Congress, because Congress is going to be home and we want to make sure that they're hearing the concerns of the faith community. I would suggest, and I think, Josh, I mean, correct me if you think this is wrong, but it seems to me like there is an opportunity to talk to members of the Texas legislature as well, and that what they've indicated is even though they can only do so much, they want to make sure they are doing what they can do. And we heard that several times in the hearing from both chairs, that they, while they know they have limited authority over this situation, they would like to use their authority to the maximum extent possible.
Right. So
And
I
that
think
was
that's the
Chairman
message.
Navarez and Chairman Anchia, but I mean, that was a really
Well, and that's-
substantive hearing.
Yeah, it was, and let's remember I mean, there was a lot of focus on law enforcement, but it was the Homeland Security Committee.
Yep.
So the two committees we should probably mention briefly, the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, which it has jurisdiction over what
Right.
it sounds like, which is why I was so heavily law enforcement oriented.
Right.
And then it was the International Relations and Economic Development. I think
Well, and it was so interesting.
the business aspects, because the commerce aspect.
And one of the things that we heard was, this is problematic for especially those smaller communities, because they
Oh.
depend a lot on that
Yeah.
back and forth commerce.
That was kind of the big
That was
thing in
a-
the testimony. Actually,
Yeah.
it's just how dependent they were, and so there's actually two bridges.
So
two
closing
crossings.
the bridges is not helpful to their economy.
Yeah, exactly. Their economies depend on that cross-border traffic that comes across.
Exactly.
the way. So that was a real problem for a lot of those local communities financially as well, as they struggle to pay for it.
Exactly. Exactly.
The activities.
They're getting, their income is going down as their responsibilities are going up.
Yeah, so I was kind of like, just kind of scribbling out 4 things, I think, and to talk to your state.
To your state
legislature,
legislator.
about this. One, we just covered it, was licensing and making sure that you fully exercise the authority of the state and oversight of the federal government.
That's
Really exercising those
Don't
checks and
assume no,
balances.
assume yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, because the state is sovereign. That's
Right.
our federal system.
That's right.
So let's fully exercise that oversight and accountability of the checks and balances that were so designed by the founders. Two, I really think part of that oversight is probably data. There's a lot of data we just didn't know.
Sure.
When I say we as in the state, do you collect this? No. Do you collect that? No. Would you collect this?
Yeah, and it was sort of surprising to hear some of it where, I mean, occasionally legislators would say, well, would it be helpful to you if you did collect that? Wouldn't that be data you'd like to have? And they said, oh yeah, we'd like to have.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I'm talking about two, but A1 or AB.
Sure.
1B, I should say,
Sure.
is the data piece that comes with the oversight.
Absolutely.
So I guess that would be number two, money to locals, money to local government.
Yep.
And not just government, but I mean, you can do grant programs for nonprofits as well, because nonprofits are bearing the burden of that may be best decided locally.
You thinking those are state dollars for that?
Well, I
Is that
mean,
the ask her?
there was a lot of talk about
There was
the
a
thing
lot
called
of talk
budget
about that.
execution, which if you're not a big Texas budget nerd, that means
So most of us.
right. So if you're in the 140 days, the one thing you have to pass is a budget, and pass a budget, or you go in a special session. But in the interims, the 18 months in between, often emergencies arise that it's called a budget execution. So the LBB, or the Legislative Budget Board, is made up of the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker. And I think they have some appointees to it as well, if I recall the process. But anyway, the bottom line is all three have to kind of sign off that we're going to move something from item one to move it to something else.
And that's typically how, for example, that's how Harvey
Oh, yeah,
were
just like
shaking those quickly,
Yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah, Harvey, or even when there was a child protective crisis.
Exactly,
with the
exactly.
federal litigation, they did that.
Right.
I think that before the 2017 session.
It's used frequently.
Yeah, it's used. I think it's probably used.
No, it's
More
used
constantly.
exactly.
More than
We have
time.
a biennial budget. A lot can happen in 2 years.
Yeah, which is part of the reason we're able to still be biennial.
Right.
Is that we can have that kind of authority. So making sure that we get money to locals, and really to do that in the interim, you got to spend the interim really studying what are the costs to local government. So that was part of what this hearing started down the road on, and should continue. I mean, to really figure out what these costs are to local government and the state.
And it was really heartening.
Because we didn't even touch education.
One of the things that was really heartening about this hearing was how much substantive information those local officials came bearing.
That, yeah,
That
they came with a
they
lot.
know what the costs are. They know to a granular level what's going on in
Mhm.
their community. So, I mean, I think whatever strategy the state might evolve for reimbursing local government or helping local government try to claim funding from the federal government or whoever, the local officials are the ones who really know what's going on and need to be
Yeah.
part of that conversation.
Yeah, and then so, yeah, I mean, so the data that comes from that is essential to, one, making sure that the locals have the resources they need.
Right.
But then there comes the point where the state and local taxpayers want to get reimbursed by the federal government.
That's right. They
Causing
brought
these
us how
expenses.
hard that's been.
Yeah, I mean, if you just send a letter to the federal government, they're gonna
Can we have some money?
yeah, they're gonna probably say no.
Yeah.
And yes, they do have authority, well, not authority, they do have influence, I should say. Local, state legislators have influence with your congressional delegation, and there's some federal money that could probably come from that process as well. But lastly, I mean, this is what gets me to ask number three. As a general rule, states cannot tax the federal government. But there's always exceptions. That's why lawyers like their jobs. It is completely constitutional for states to tax private contractors. And so while it's true, one of the things that came up in the hearing is the state really has no idea what is in these contracts between the private contractor and the federal government. But the state doesn't really need to know. The state is feeling the downstream effects and all those costs to local government, and also there's a cost to licensing and enforcement at the state level as well.
Sure.
And then how many immunizations and things of that nature are we doing to protect public health? There's all sorts of costs, and then there's the educational aspect that this hearing didn't even get into, because we do provide educational services in the Plywater versus Doe. So anyway, the point is that there are all these downstream effects that are costing state and local taxpayers. So having a tax on these private contractors for the things that it's legitimately costing us that they are not doing or inadequately doing, or that it has an effect, would be completely constitutional and worth exploring. It would take probably all interim to really figure out to figure out precisely how to do it.
Added to that, you keep talking about state and local taxpayers, but you mentioned at the beginning that the faith community is also bearing an enormous brunt.
That's right.
So, as faith leaders and, clergy folks meet with their representatives, is that a conversation you have as well?
I mean, I was just gonna say, I think you wanna be careful always. The faith community does not begrudge the resources that it contributes to whatever humanitarian need there is, whether it's, a situation that's man-made, like what's going on at the border, or if it's a natural disaster like a hurricane. But I think it is really important for all levels of government to understand the reality of what resources are available and how they're being allocated. Because, for example, in 2017, we had a huge hurricane that took all the philanthropic and faith-based resources of the state. Well, if we'd have had this exact thing going on at the border at the same time, and then with the natural disasters that hit the border as well, at some point you just can't spend $1 more than one time. Yeah. So if the faith community is expected to be stepping up for every single one of these catastrophes, it's just a matter of real limits on capacity. And that's why at the national level, some of our colleagues have started referring to this phenomenon that is characterized as the triple threat. And our friend Melanie Mullen at the Episcopal Church said they're characterizing the triple threat as climate change, disaster, and migration, because we know that those three things are inextricably linked globally, and the church, of course, functions globally. We see the way they're getting started in one place and the way they're playing out in another place. And all three of those things, as we know from the report from 2010 on climate in the church, all three of those things are huge objects of expense for global missions of the faith communities, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and non-Abrahamic traditions all. So I think it's what's, of course, at 30,000 feet, that's not quite a legislatively
a super
active.
concrete example of what you said.
But a concrete example is, what has your congregation done, and how do you go about marshaling those resources? How, if at all, do you leverage them? And what do you see as appropriate?
Well, and
next
think about
steps?
just really super like sheltering. You got one Methodist church in San Antonio is taking in partnership with the city, has been taking in a number of the African refugees to try to, because there's language barriers and specialized. So if that church's shelter is full of migrants, of refugees, and a hurricane hits, and it takes, if it hits Houston and 25% of the state's population again, and you need shelters, you can't. Yeah, but what do you do? I mean, the resources are limited at some point.
And that's why the bill that
In the
passed.
nonprofit sector.
That's why the bill that passed this session, Representative Hunter's bill 3616, is so important, because it's really important for the faith community and the agencies of government to be in close conversation about this going forward.
And it does seem that at the local level, that really seems to be like they're having to. I mean,
Oh yeah,
surviving, but that
Absolutely.
coordination seems to be occurring.
But so I know you probably want to wrap it up, but there's 3 things that we are asking people to talk to members of Congress about, and I do want to
Different than the legislature.
So in August, all the members of Congress are going to be home in the district. If you go to a meeting with them, that's great. If not, if you can call, if you can, drop a note, whatever. But it's really important, I think, that they hear from as many constituents as possible during that period of time, because when they go back, what they will do is work on the budget. And these are asks that a lot have to do with the federal budget. So the main ask, and the Interfaith Immigration Coalition and all of our partners affirm that the main thing is, we're not funding currently, as Josh said, the civil immigration system. So we're not funding the courts, we're not funding people who can be at the border to take the asylum claim. And so all of this stuff, all of these sort of workarounds, trying to make people stay in Mexico because we don't have enough people to process their claim quickly, trying to get people to, trying to manage the asylum process without putting more money into it, trying to manage the immigration process without putting more money into it, is all, it's a lost cause. It's never gonna result in anything but exactly what you see playing out. So the first thing is start spending the money it would take to process people's claims efficiently. The fact that there are a lot of people is because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So, saying, well, we don't spend the money on that, this is what there is.
You keep seeing efforts to try to change asylum laws.
Right, that's
and
not
cut
the way.
off access.
And that is the opposite of what the United States is about.
I mean, and doing all kinds of little things to try. I mean, if you're really about the rule of law, okay, why have we not doubled the number of immigration judges and sped up the process to give a speedy trial and really adjudicate these claims?
Right.
That may or may not be good.
And yes.
Let's double down on due process and do it for rule of law.
In contradiction of what a lot of folks in the administration have said, most people who get an opportunity to go to court show up for their hearing.
I came up in the legislative hearing. I mean,
Yeah,
whatever narrative out that they don't show up is clearly erroneous.
Clearly erroneous.
Yeah.
So the first thing is fund the system. We have a system. It's not fair to say the system is not working and all the people are criminals if you're not actually funding the system to see if it would work.
Yeah.
The second thing is stop detaining children and families. Stop trying to make the federal government into a foster system. It's not designed for that, and that's not.
And that costs
It's
hundreds of
$700. What they
dollars
say,
a day?
$799 a day.
That was the most expensive one. I think it was the Carrizo Springs one, but I can't remember the facility.
The one that didn't look horrific.
Yeah, and the last numbers I saw were somewhere around the 300s on average, but
Nevertheless.
but nevertheless, I mean,
How much is a foster parent get? Did they say it was $56 a day?
Oh my gosh, that's okay. I didn't catch that, but then the ankle monitors cost like $110 a day, if I recall.
The third
$10.
Exactly. So it is amazing.
Which
amazing.
I mean, I think, and then they charge the detainees or they charge the defendant for having the ankle monitor. So
the third thing is probably not so much a money thing, but it absolutely goes to the issue of rule of law and the future of our democracy. And that is, we must have civil rights and human rights observers in the federal facilities.
Yeah.
They need to not.
The Customs and Border Patrol ones seem to be the ones that are especially.
They need to be
the child ones, yes.
Domestic and international, just like we would expect in any other country. If any other country were having a thing they characterized as a humanitarian crisis, we would expect international human rights observers to be there. There's no reason they shouldn't be here just because it's our country.
All right, so we have our talking points, and we would encourage you to go ahead and sign up for those visits at texasimpact.org. Y'all, this issue isn't going away anytime soon, so sadly. So I'm sure we will be talking more about it in the weeks and months to come. But for today, go ahead and sign up to make one of those August congressional visits. Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, but you're right. With climate change, this is not going away anytime soon. In fact, I think this may be. Well, how we respond to this when the people alive didn't fight World War II?
Right.
I think it's a real test for our generation. It could be a real test for our century about how the United States of America is going to respond to these migrations, these desperate migrations,
Exactly.
and refugees and asylees going forward.
So make sure to sign up for the August congressional visits. Make sure you register for the Houston Interfaith Advocacy Training Sunday, July 21st. At Darien Memorial United Methodist Church in Houston. Hey, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for the work that you're doing in your communities each and every day. We hope that you'll take those experiences and share them with the people who represent you. We're going to be talking a lot about that over the course of the next 18 months. And go ahead and let us know what you'd like to hear in the upcoming Weekly Witnesses. Before we close out, because I see him about to push the button, Noah Westfall has been kind of helping behind the scenes for Weekly Witness for the last year. He finishes his term. You want to come get on the shot?
Yeah, come get the shot. Come on.
So, he wasn't prepared for this, and we're just gonna roll. So Noah, really, you've been doing a lot of the work to both prepare for it and turn out this content. So thank you for your work. He's heading to graduate school in DC soon. Anything you want to say before you close out your time with us?
Yep. Thank you so much for the opportunity to work with Texas Impact, and it's been a really good year, and I feel like I've learned a lot.
All right. Well, thank you for everything you've done. Feel free to reach out to him and tell him thanks if you've been in the room or have had a chance to meet him. So, no, thanks again, and thank you all for tuning in. As always, if you have made it this far in the broadcast, you obviously appreciate the work of Weekly Witness and Texas Impact. So please make sure to support that work by making sure that you and your congregation are members. You can do that online at texasimpact.org/join. We'll have more content coming to you next week. Keep an eye on Texas Impact social media and e-news for more ways to get involved. Until then, let's get to work. We'll see you soon. Thanks.